Hello everyone, welcome to UMD Media. UMD Media works on understanding, measuring, and doing. It strives to contribute for an evidence-led, evidence-rich discourse and decision-making in the Horn of Africa. And your host is Getachew Asafa. Today, we are back with another topic. For those who are following us on YouTube and Facebook, please share, subscribe, like, so that many can access this content. UMD Media is live on Facebook and YouTube. The UN Ethiopia or Ethiopia UN joint investigation in Tigray is wrapping up, and the report is scheduled to be out on Wednesday, the November 3rd. And we are here today to talk about that, specifically focusing on how it started and how we might also consider the end of it. So with this topic, I'm pleased to have Michele Minassie as my guest. Michele, welcome to UMD Media Show.
Thank you, Getachew. Thank you for having me.
Great. If I show our viewers this, so this is a topic we have today, start to end of joint Ethiopia UN investigation in Tigray. We have covered this topic 2 weeks ago in the H panel, where we tried to cover what others said and how questionable it is in terms of independence and the process, all that, including the methodology. But Michele Minassie is, at least he was at the first phase part of the team, and we'll be talking about what he observed and what he said. For those who want to follow Michele, he is active on Facebook, maybe not as active on Twitter, and he has a long professional career from journalism, communication, and public information. He was not, or the UN Ethiopia joint investigation, which lasted only for 10 days, was not his first UN-related job. As you can see here, he has been working with the UN mission in South Sudan. He was working as well in the United Nations mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea, a number of other international, regional, and national. And currently, he is the producer and host of the English show Mabala Foresight. With that introduction, maybe let's begin how your first contact and maybe the run up to your job, very short job employment at the joint investigation team. Can you share with us how that went and what was leading up to that moment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. As you said, that was the shortest time of employment for me, just 10 days, but it opened up a lot of window for me to see, the nature of the joint investigation, how it all took off. At first, like many other Tigrayans, I had this mixed feeling. There was opposition, of course, to the involvement of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission by Tigrayans all over the world. They have demonstrated against that. They have written petitions and all that. And but there was this sense that some investigation, at least, is better than no investigation on many quarters. And I also believed that. And when the opportunity presented itself, also I wanted to see for myself firsthand, what would be happening in this investigation, and also try to contribute to cushion the damage that. But unfortunately, how the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission works is very, very vicious, very manipulative. Not only manipulated the investigators there, but even the UN as a whole. It's only a day after the Amnesty International exposed the Aksum massacre that the Ethiopian government agreed to some sort of investigation. At first, it was adamant. It was against any form of investigation. You remember there were calls by the international community for an independent investigation. The government refused. But when this expose came, the horrible massacres at Aksum, hundreds of, the faithful, who were celebrating the holiday of Saint Mary in Aksum, were massacred brutally in broad daylight. Then it knew, the regime knew that it cannot hide everything as before. So it presented this proposal to the UN for a joint investigation involving itself, which is one of the main suspects in this whole thing. Of course, the Eritrean government is another suspect, but equally the Ethiopian government is a suspect. So how can you trust, the fox in the hen house? But it manipulated the UN into coming into partnership with itself, and that was the intention, is to cover the investigation, to cover the truth, to manipulate the investigation, and to manipulate it the way it serves its ends. At first, we had hoped that the UN was trying to confirm what it knew all along, because the international community knew what was happening in Tigray, all the atrocities. The international media also covered some of these atrocities. But Abiy government was also bent on, using the weight of the joint investigation, which it could not have achieved by itself without the UN, to seal the already formed stance. At covering the atrocities. Therefore, I, like all the other applicants, I applied. I was screened and passed the requirement, and I joined. But simply because I was a journalist, asking questions like what you do, for Magala Foresight, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission interfered in the work of the UN and asked for my removal from the joint investigation as an interpreter. So this is, another indication how the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission tries to skew the investigation, to manipulate the investigation. Even interfering in the internal workings of the UN. I was hired by the UN, but they finally succeeded in in forcing me to resign, basically. Although the UN at first tried to resist, but they finally gave in. Like, what the UN did with the whole call for an independent investigation. They were calling for this independent investigation, but they gave in finally to a joint investigation, which includes the main perpetrator here.
Yeah, that's actually, UMD Media has detailed information on how the process went as well, in terms of not only pushing you out, But after that, in terms of gathering information, selectively selecting the sites to include the methodology, the data, everything was totally short of any kind of independent investigation or high regard to the victims, to the at the receiving end of this genocidal war, all that. Let's talk about the first how this was brought together. So we heard that there was no interest at all, even to take this the issue of concern within the commission. But like you mentioned, when others did it, then there was a rush. And of course, there was this famous or infamous Maikarra investigation that was rushed and done. And we know how that went. Maybe it's worth talking about that, because the people who investigated, quote unquote, Maikarra, were also part of the broader Tigray investigation. Broader again, quote unquote, because we will talk about how selective that was as well in terms of what to include or not. So you mentioned about, you wrote a 7-page, we'll be talking about that in detail a bit, about your experience, what happened before that, and the details of what was going on, and your perspective, how this cannot be at all an independent investigation. So can you share with us what you knew or what your perspective is on the Maikarra investigation and how it went?
Well, I was not in the Maikarra investigation. I was not part of that, but I understand that the Maikarra investigation was done solely by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Although this was a very serious thing and disputed by both sides, this should have been investigated by an independent body. But the government decided to do it alone, and it was not only rushed, as the chief of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission admitted later that there might have been some problems, but it was deliberate. In fact, that was intended to fan, the sentiment of the Ethiopian public against the people of Tigray. Actually, it intensified the genocidal war. So that report was biased. In fact, as you said, the head of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission team in the joint investigation was the one who did the Maikarra investigation, who led the Maikarra investigation. And from people who were on the ground, what I heard was she was, accompanied by the Fano and the Amhara militia, because she was afraid for her life, that because she was doing this in the service of Abiy Ahmed, trying to avoid the victims, the real victims, who are the Tigrayans, who were, some people died from the other side also, but from the reports done by international media like Reuters in Sudan, by interviewing people who fled to Sudan, the horrible atrocities were inflicted mainly on the Tigrayans, but they turned it upside down, and she was at the core of this, and she was trying to do the same in the, as you said, Tigray-wide investigation, and it was not wide in the real sense of the term, because they only select. At first, they gave us a list of, over 40 places to go, but they only went to 12. And that includes Addis Ababa, Adwashu, Humera, Bahar Dar, Gondar. The 6 of them, Tigrayans cannot speak out with confidence and with freedom. So it was a wrong selection. All those atrocities that happened in Tigray, like in Mariam Dangelat, Aksum, Mahabaredego, Gidjet, Samra, Parasalawa, and all the rest, they didn't go to those places. In fact, they didn't go to any of the areas where the Eritrean forces committed heinous atrocities. So it was deliberate. They, in fact, denied the presence of Eritrean troops, and they wanted to absolve the Eritrean, forces from the crimes.
Yeah, so this is Albab Tasfai Yalo, who led the Maikara investigation. I gather that it was a four-member team investigation. These are the rest. I heard one of them has left the commission and she's working for the BBC, I think, in Nairobi now. The rest, they are still there and they are part of the Tigray broader investigation, and these are the other people who are still active or were in the joint investigation. And what I gathered is when the Maikadra investigation was done, there was, you just mentioned briefly as well, there was a strong presence of the regional force and the Fano, and they dictated where to go, whom to talk to. And when they asked to talk to people in the camp, there was at that time a camp, but they were not allowed to do that. So one thing that bothers me, and I want to just throw it there, is the fact that even the investigators were not free to go to, to talk to people they thought should talk to, but they are not talking about that. They are presenting it, or they reported it as if it was really an independent one, and so on. So that experience, as admitted by Daniel Bakala to the Guardian as well, was one-sided. He mentioned that. He admitted that when he was forced to talk about it. So, but they still decided to take in the same team, the same leader from the Ethiopian side. So how did the UN, in your view again, how did the UN part agreed to continue with that? What is your take on that, given that we know there was this questionable, controversial, and in fact that made the Tigrayan witnesses to just distance themselves from not collaborating, as you mentioned in your article as well. So what do you think was going on in terms of the UN giving in?
I think it should be emanating from high above. Even Guterres insists on an Ethiopian process all the time. He wants to be nice to Abiy, and I don't think it is out of ignorance. It is a willful collaboration in this ploy on the part of the UN. Now, looking by hindsight, they were giving into all sorts of interference by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, which is only a partner in the investigation. But starting from getting us removed from the job, me and my colleague, who was removed simply because his profile picture for Facebook says Tigray genocide. It's just ridiculous. And when they go to the investigations, because I was also doing my own research, although they were trying to create obstacles into my involvement, when they were going to the IDP camps in Magala, the team leader of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission decided to involve security people. The people were being interviewed in the presence of security people in plain clothes. They were disguised as civilians, but they were there. And the people knew them because all these people displaced, they know each other. And there were people, Eritrean, Ethiopian security personnel. And it was very intimidating atmosphere, even for conducting interviews. And because of this and because of the lack of trust on Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, because of what's of their track record, The people were not willing. There was a lot of non-compliance, but the UN was, very much decided on, trying to do some sort of investigation, not a real investigation. Therefore, I think it is a willful submission to the whims of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. In fact, the way they were, conducting their interviews, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission wanted to poke down all these, the interviews with unnecessary questions, not unnecessary because it's not related to the mandate of the joint investigation. They were asking whether the IDPs were getting food, the camp management issues, and all that. But they are supposed to look into the egregious human rights violations that happened, the rapes, the gang rapes, the forced displacements, the enforced disappearances, the extrajudicial killings, all these atrocities, and they want to veer away, from the main agenda to other issues, PT issues, to kill the time, and also, it's a double-edged sword to blame the international community, because even their boss Abiy has always been heard saying that the international community calls for unhindered humanitarian access, but when it is given that access, they don't deliver. So even in the induction that we were given, the first day induction for, to prepare us for the work, they were parroting the same view. This what I just said, trying to point the finger at the international community. And they were just second guessing what the victims were, the victims had to say, not trusting what they say. And even the investigation was a kind of police-like, not considering the trauma that they have passed through. It was really intimidating and unsympathetic to their plight. And they wanted they were trying to rush to Maikadra because they know who to find there, to repeat the same mistake. Although the people who are in the IDP camps are the people who were displaced from Maikadra. Some of them are from Maikadra, although others are also from everywhere.
Yeah. So, in fact, EMD Media has learned that when the UN, the UN part of the joint team, when they first recommended and even demanded that if witnesses, which was prevalent at that time in the Tigray case, didn't want to talk to the Ethiopian team because of the Maikadra experience, they should be allowed only to talk to the UN part of the joint team. And we learned that Daniel Bakala and the whole commission insisted that it's not going to happen at all. And in fact, he threatened to the extent of saying they can drop out of the joint investigation, and the Ethiopian part would continue with that, alone and so on. So that took weeks of communication between Geneva and Addis. And unfortunately for the victims, unfortunately for those who are at the receiving end of all these genocidal crimes, the UN gave in. So that's what we learned. And the other interesting that you indirectly kind of mentioned is the fact that in many investigations of this kind and others, what people or those who are investigating, what they look for is consistency and so on. But consistency in the Tigray case was taken by the Ethiopian team as a problem. This was mentioned in their training, where they were saying, what we expect from the Tigrayans witnesses would be consistent, and it is a problem. So this was mentioned in the training itself by the Ethiopian part of the team, when an international trainer was talking about what would be a problem, as a flagship for flagging problems, is when they are not consistent, all that and so on. So the point is, there was already bias from the get-go, and Daniel Bakala, in fact, has all kind of reasons, from ideological to, his bias, political bias, that dictated how things should go and who should be there, all that. So one thing that I want to play is a video, a very short clip of Daniel talking about the war, and he was talking how things went well, or relatively better than what many were fearing. He's talking about the Tigray war. So let's play that.
The military operation did not result in as severe consequences as it was originally feared to be. There was talk of a huge bloodbath. There was talk of a huge.
So here he's talking about what he thinks happened, what happened, and how he sees that in terms of what was expected and what was the outcome. So isn't this clear for me? I mean, to have the Human Rights Commissioner hat and talking about the same war, the same crimes he is supposed to investigate, but he went in with this bias.
Absolutely, yeah. Hearing this from a Human Rights Commission chief is really very sad, to say the least. Downplaying what has happened. In fact, you cannot explain what has happened in Tigray with words. So he goes as far as downplaying it. He should have been concerned with whatever human rights violations. Whatever human rights violations is really concerning. He's not supposed to be saying such things, but because we know why he's saying that, he is there to to defend the regime, the indefensible regime of Abiy Ahmed.
Maybe let me just play another one. This is September 13th. That was when they said the field work was done, but we know that, like you mentioned, it's interesting as well. Once they selected Magala and southern Tigray, and the rest would be the west, which is controlled by Eritrean and Ethiopian forces. So they didn't go, at least as part of the joint investigations, they didn't go to northern Tigray, eastern Tigray, central Tigray, where a lot of atrocities and crimes happen. Even then, on September 13th in the council, he himself and the Attorney General Gideon Timotheus were speaking. And after that, we gather that there was data collection from government offices, federal executive bodies, all that. So communication by the leader of the team, Al-Bab, and so on. So, but he's talking about a field work done on September 13th at the council. Let's watch that.
We remain concerned by the still dire humanitarian situation, particularly of IDPs. The federal government, the local authorities in the region, as well as the humanitarian agencies, should redouble their efforts to ensure humanity, but it is also a human standard to live up to. This requires the humility to understand that there is no political righteousness or no just cause, that no amount of political righteousness and just cause can justify the extent of the human suffering we have lived through other people and as a country during this war. It also requires the humility to understand that the available national, legal, and institutional parameters are far from being perfect, but they remain, in every sense, the most relevant and the most cost-effective tools for addressing the human rights crisis, as well as finding a sustainable solution out of this war. Therefore, we urge all parties to the conflict, as well as the international partners, to reach into this humility. I thank you, Madam President.
Before that, there is a...
But it is also a human standard. They should always work with full understanding of history and context of this complex political crisis. Let me conclude by saying that the Council members and the international community should be really cognizant that it is still people of Ethiopia who have the highest stake in putting an end to the suffering of fellow Ethiopians. It's a principle that defines national sovereignty, but it is also a human standard to live up to. This requires the humility to understand that there is no political righteousness.
So here he's talking about exactly the prime ministers or the government's talking points about sovereignty and about how the national frameworks, legal frameworks are capable of handling this. And he's basically saying, you know, stay away from this. So was this something that you are seeing, or can you speak to that?
And what's surprising is he talks about sovereignty, and he has not, uttered about all the atrocities by Eritrean forces. The country, Abiy Ahmed invited Eritrean invaders, to commit all these atrocities to one part of the country, and yet he's, trying to speak about, sovereignty, which doesn't, hold water.
Yeah. So the one thing that we know that the report will be coming out day after tomorrow. This is the post from the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, where they say the report on Tigray conflict to be published on 3rd November. And they will be holding a press conference from Addis and Geneva. And what should we be cautious about? What should we expect from this report, from what you have seen, from what you are following, and from your very limited involvement? But I'm sure that gave you a window into what the process is and how the all that comes to that reporting.
Yeah, from what I have seen so far, I don't think we should expect a lot from this investigation. In the first place, this investigation should not have involved, an arm of the government, which is a suspect in this whole atrocities. So, and the way they were conducting the investigation, as we discussed, is really something to worry about. So I don't think this will be a genuine investigation. Actually, this should be a lesson for the world on how to do an investigation. It's not about investigation into real human rights abuse. It's a venture to cover up crimes. Who should be, crimes committed by, people in high places of power, who should be held accountable.
On the account of all this, your experience, how it went, and so on, you wrote a 7-page article, and I mean, what was the going in your mind in terms of do you feel? I mean, it's only 10 days of your involvement and your employment, but do you feel like this was something that should go out? And there is, do you think there is insufficient understanding how this joint team is working, and what are the process, the methodology, all that. Why do you see there is no enough voice from the international community in questioning this joint investigation? The reason I'm asking that is when the September 13th council happened, Daniel was there, and then the Gideon Timotheus was there. They were basically repeating the same thing in terms of even if Ethiopian government is one of these, should be subject to the for the under the investigation, but they were defending and putting forward the talking points of the government. One are the commissioner, the other are the attorney general. So can you speak to the content, the essential content of your article that was written regarding your experience with the investigation team?
Yeah, basically, this is as the topic indicates, it's a peak. It's just kind of looking through a small lens into the initial aspect of the investigation. But from what I have also come to learn from my former colleagues and from the victims themselves, from people in the camps, camp managers and other people, the investigation was not properly done. It was sabotaged by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. And what I am trying to say here is this the atrocities that happened in Tigray are so horrendous, so huge, and this conflict is complex. It warranted an independent, internationally sanctioned investigation. So to bring in, an incompetent, partial body, this Human Rights Commission is appointed by the government. The leaders are appointed by the government, by the Prime Minister himself, and they are financed by the government. And their track record, it's not only in Tigray that atrocities are happening. It has been happening all over Ethiopia, in Oromia, in Benishangul, in the south, and all that. They were very selective what to condemn and what to investigate. They had no capacity. They don't have the capacity to handle such big issues of human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, genocide, ethnic cleansing, aggression by the Eritrean forces. These are things to be investigated by, capable institutions. Therefore, the world has failed Tigray. The world has failed the victims by being part of this investigation. That's the message that I am trying to send in this piece.
Great. Yeah, on that topic, we heard also that, especially when the investigation team went to Western Tigray, to the Amhara region, and in some cases even to federal agencies, they were asked if there was any Tigrayan in the team. So the receiving end, they were supposed to give what information they have and what data they have, and they were supposed to just follow the rules and accept the team as a team. But they were asking if there is any Tigrayan in the team, in the investigation team, they shouldn't be allowed to talk to the authorities who were supposed to collaborate. And this UMD media has learned about how things were going. And in the Western Tigray, we learned as well that there was intimidation, there was harassment of the teams when they went again, because the Maikadra was done outside the joint investigation, right? Before the joint investigation. Then when the joint investigation came, the Maikadra, when they want to include it because of the critics or the criticism they received, when they went back again, they were intimidated. So they adopted the original Maikadra as part of as if it's part of the joint investigation. That we have learned as well. The same with Aksum. Aksum investigation was done, like you mentioned, because of the international coverage it had. And what we learned again is the Aksum investigation actually, which was done by the Tigray branch of this commission, was relatively well, but it was forced to be watered down, and it was asked to remove some elements of that investigation by Daniel Bakkala and the leader of this joint investigation from the Ethiopian side. And whatever would be included in the joint investigation about Aksum would be the watered down, and it was not part of the joint investigation. It was done before that. So much have we learned about this so-called joint investigation. So this is for our viewers to understand the process, the methodology, the bias, the harassment, the intimidation, and the very selective and very limited. Not even we cannot even call it the tip of the iceberg. It cannot be, taken seriously, but it's going to be released by this so-called joint investigation team on Wednesday this week, 2 days from now. And one thing that many are worried about from the people we talk to in Tigray and otherwise, if the international community, including the European Union, the US, and other bodies, are waiting for this investigative report on which to base their whatever measures they are going to take. So how worried, how concerned should Tigray be, or the victims should be when this would be used, when they know this would be used as the basis for sanctions or not on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think it is worrying really, and it will not bring about accountability as much as we desire. Maybe they will, go for the small fish. That's what happens usually in with the big powers. That's what they do, as long as it's not in their interest. So I don't know what they will come up with, what actions they will take, but surely an action based on such flimsy investigations or skewed investigations is not to bring about the desired result in terms of accountability, in terms of addressing the plight of the victims, or the bringing about the healing of the wounds of the victims.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's indeed specifically there is also a concern about setting if they can do this with a big and obviously and internationally followed atrocities and crimes. Imagine what they can do in terms of those that are not getting so much international attention. So again, this is the team, or part of the team, that is investigating that. It's led by the Ethiopian team is led by Albab Tasfai Ayalo and Yibekal Gizau. Tarikwa Getachew is known to have a lot of biases and fascistic tendencies, and I mean, these people, they use human rights language to cover the most atrocious human rights abuse that we have seen, what we have witnessed. And the same with Daniel Bakkala, his international network, his use of human rights language is a cover that is being used again to downplay, to water down the sufferings of the victims. So this is something that we should be watching out when the report comes out. And there is a UN team, but the UN team has given in everything to the Ethiopian team. So every decision, every from the use of the language, like you were saying, to make the Ethiopian government, the highest authorities, the leadership, clean or free from these responsibilities, accountability. This is being done by the Ethiopian team. And on the UN side, led by Charles, but there are people like, I have Kinet above, Meron Befukadu in the UN side of the team, who are also pushing or have been pushing for the same kind of bias, selective narrative, and not listening to victims, not covering the most affected areas in central Tigray, in eastern Tigray, and in northern Tigray. Final word before we finish today's show, Michaela?
Well, I think for accountability to happen, because they should not get away with this. So much has happened in Tigray, and those who did this should be held accountable. That's the bottom line. And for this to happen, I think this should not be taken as a basis. An independent investigation, internationally sanctioned, neutral investigation should be done. And we should not always talk of this never again. Rwanda, Yugoslavia, Bosnia, and so you don't say never again and then repeat the same thing. So if real accountability is to come up, to be realized, so that such things do not happen again in the world, then the right thing should be done in the right manner. And this is not the way to go about it. It should be rectified. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so the reason we at UMD Media were focusing on this investigative report is we have learned from the get-go that every Tigrayan is a suspect until proven innocent. That was the kind of modus operandi of Daniel Bekele and the entire commission. And for those who are interested in this investigative report and the bias, all that, I think you have given us some tidbits in terms of nuggets to investigate more, to analyze more. But the show today was focusing on your experience and what we have learned from the nitty-gritty of the internal processes, the methodologies, the biases, the who is who behind this report. And I thank you very much for your time, Michaela, and I hope we will catch up again on other topics on your Media Show.
Thank you very much for having me, Getachew. Thank you.
Bye for now. You have been following our topic, our show today, start to end of joint Ethiopia-UN investigation in Tigray. The report will be released on Wednesday, November 3rd. And we have covered today with Michaela Minassie, who was there when the investigative report started, or the investigation started, but was forced to resign because of the requirement, the demand from the Ethiopian side. And that has been consistent not only on him, but others who they thought would bring in something that would implicate the Ethiopian government, which is the prime suspect, the prime perpetrator of this crime in Tigray. Your host was Getachew Asafa. Until we see you again with another show. Bye for now.